have this Flavortown app, right? And so we learned about Cornel and how it built like your Sinatra app for you. Rails new will build that skeleton. I'm sure Steven showed you. So here, when we ls, we show all the files in here. All we see is Flavortown. So before I can do anything else, I need to cd into it, right? So let me cd into Flavortown. Right. As you can see, it did in fact run bundle already, so I do not need to do that. Right? I'm going to just simply open up my project and take a look. Is there something that I need to do at this moment with this application? I have Flavortown app. Do I have my MVC set up? No. So if you were to see a deliverable, right, something like I want a display of all my bagels. Let's just go with that one, right? I want to see all my bagels, right? What do I need to do right now? I do need to create the migrations, right? I need to actually have the database. I need to actually have the model. So that being said, we learned about those Rails generators, right? Should have, at least from the lab, but they work exactly the same way as that Cornel did when I showed you. It allows Rails to write Rails for you. And so instead of normally going in here, right, going into controllers and then creating a new file and calling that like bagels controller, I'm going to have Rails do it for me. In the same way, with the models, some of at least just the folder for views, and then we will go into the routes. Cool? Who can tell me, who has gotten through, please, this one I need you on, who has gotten through at least the generators inside Rails? Can anyone tell me the difference between generating the controller, generating the model, and something called generating a resource? Who has heard of resource? Awesome. So let me ask you, right? And this is like a question I actually need an answer to, and that is, do you want me to build model and controller from scratch, or do you want me to use more of the helper and use resource? So who says model controller? Who says resource? Awesome. So allow me to explain for whoever it is that just wants that clarification. If I were to do something like Rails G controller, I can give it the name of the controller, like bagels. Bagels. This should be a little bit more, right? Like this. And what that will do is Rails will build me the Rails controller for bagels, right? If I were to do, say, Rails G generate model, then I can talk about bagel as the model, which is singular, and then I can pass in attributes of the bagel, like name, and then price, things like that. If I were, however, to use something called resource, right, what this is going to do for me, and it does a lot, and we'll go over it, is it will build the controller, it will build the model, it will build an empty views folder for bagels, and also within my routes, it'll put resources bagel, which is insane because it kind of does everything. It also creates the migration. It does not migrate, but will create the migration, right? So what are the attributes for bagel? Sweet. Let's give it a name, right? I want to stay away from type, right? Only because if you were to do this with the keyword type, T-Y-P-E, Rails likes to reserve that as like a special keyword, type. And so it will break on you, right? So just be aware of that. Sweet, right? So toasty, and that is a Boolean, right? I mean, it could be a string, but let's make it a Boolean since that would make more sense as whether something is just toasted or not toasted. Absolutely.
If you didn't put string next to name, how come? Is it that string you don't need it, or?
Absolutely, very good question. String is the default parameter for the attribute since string is so common. Very often your attributes will be string. So I can in fact do this, but because it's the default parameter, as long as I separate it with a space, Rails will recognize in this command there's an attribute called name, followed by no semicolon, no special identifier for the data type. It will understand that it is a string. Very good question, sir.
And that's always singular, the bagels.
The resource will be singular because it's going after the model, and then it will pluralize for you when it builds the controller? Very good question. Normally, if I'm just doing Rails G controller, I would have to pluralize it. Any other questions? Did you have one?
No, it was asked.
Awesome. So, is there any other attributes for Bagel? Great. They're all free, so we'll just leave them alone. No price. I'm cool with it. So when I run this command, it will do, like I said, for those that were taking notes that just want to hear it one more time, it will build the model, it will build the controller, right? So, it will build the controller, right? It will build the model. It will build something called helpers, which I will go into much later. Inside routes, it'll build this. Cool. It'll also create the migration for me. So now, let's take a look. I have a Bagels controller. I have a Bagel model. I have an empty views folder for my Bagels. Right? Inside my config, already blim blammo will give me all of the RESTful routes within my routes. So I can, in fact, right now run rake routes and see all of my routes for Bagel. Oh, I'm not a big fan of that. Sorry. Okay, one more. Boop, boop, boop. Sorry. Cool. It'll give me the index, create, new, edit, show, 2 updates, remember, because update has put and patch, and then this destroy, right? That should round out all 7 of my RESTful routes, mapping to CRUD. Cool? And these are the RESTful routes in this specific format. A quick gotcha, this is only going to take 30 seconds, is if you are building this from scratch, you're not using the resource generator. If you just want to take a look, sorry, it's not as big as I want it to be. Came out wrong, but either way. So resources, right? If I were to put resource, however, and I just forgot the S, if I were to run my rake routes, you will see that, in fact, my routes will come up, right? However, if you look, when I ran rake routes, right, you saw all the RESTful routes from before. When I ran rake routes the second time with just resource, not resources, it looks like it did the same thing, right? Bless you. Sorry, I'm just trying to format it nicely. If you look here, right, when I do this sort of edit functionality, show, update, and destroy, I need to know which one I'm editing, update, and destroying. So naturally, part of my route, I would have these params in here, and I would have this ID interpolated. If you do resource, notice that it does not give you the ID interpolation, this ID delimiter, so you can't specify what it is that you need. So just be careful when you're writing your routes. This is a common mistake because you run rake routes without looking too deep into it. You'll see, oh, my routes are there, but how come this like ID param is not coming through? And it's just probably because you missed the S. Quick typo. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Just real quickly, so when you use resource with Rails G, it's Rails G resource or resources?
I'm saying it's resource.
Okay.
Absolutely. Good question. Good clarifying question. Yeah. Awesome.
Wait, so it's Rails G resource, you put it in your terminal? Okay. But then when you put it in the routes file, within the application's
Resources is the method that Rails will run within routes that will build all the RESTful routes. Cool? Awesome. So let's move on, right? First thing we need to do is we actually need to migrate the database now that I've created the migration. I haven't actually migrated, so there's no real mapping yet to the model. Yes?
Yeah, so I guess going off that, I guess you're supposed to do like Rails DB migrate, but when I did it for my lab, I wasn't able to execute that. So I had to like rake DB migrate.
So Rails DB migrate did not work, but rake DB migrate did?
Yeah.
It's because, good.
I was going to say the version.
Yes, Rails 4, which is what some of your labs are locked on, does not have access to the Rails commands. You have to do everything through rake. Rails 5 allows you to do the Rails commands. It's essentially an alias. It will run the same command, but Rails was like, I'm like this overlord. I want to do everything for you. I want to extract everything for you. So stay on Rails, type Rails, Rails S, Rails console, Rails DB migrate. But really, it's kind of running the rake tasks under the hood. So it's a version issue. Cool? Yeah?
Sorry, not to get too far off, but when we do the resource, the Rails resource, should we include that no test framework at the end of it?
If you're building an app from scratch and you choose not to have a test framework, I would include the flag. If you are running your labs, you should definitely include the --no-test framework because it will overwrite the test we've written. And as much as we love Capybara, it provides you a direction of where to go. It's not perfect, but it will help you. And so if you don't include it when doing labs, it will break your lab.
What would you do on Friday?
Huh?
What would you do on Friday?
There's no test frame on Friday.
Okay.
There's no Capybara, so you'll have to just simply build the deliverable. So I want you to get into the habit of essentially testing your code in the browser, seeing if it works, because ultimately that's what's important, right? It's like, imagine you were building an application and you go to your boss like, hey, the app doesn't really work, but all the tests pass. Or you'd be like, look, boss, it doesn't pass this test, but everything works. I mean, you tell me what you'd prefer to hear from like your developers, right? So that's kind of the logic behind that. Awesome. So let's move forward. So I go ahead and ran the migration. And now I can check what file will tell me if I successfully migrated and I can see my database. Awesome. Boom! And there it is, right? So I could, in fact, right now go into the Rails console and check it, but I don't actually have any data. So let's make some data. Go right into the seeds, just like mod 1, right? This is what I like to do. I like to go to the schema, simply copy this and paste it so I don't forget what my attributes are, because I do it all the time. And I can do a little bit of this, a little bagel.create action. I can do name, and what would you like this name to be? Cinna Raisin, right? Cool. And is it toasty? Yes, right? Cool. Just kidding. Haha. That wasn't really that funny, sorry. So, is there another bagel you'd like to make? Cool, got it. Got you, fam. Everything. Nice. Is everything toasty? Nah. Right, very good. False. Nice. Cool. One more? Sesame. Very good. And toasty? Yeah. Yeah, son. Yeah. I should have made it a string. I've been so much better. I done messed up. My fault. Cool. So here's the thing about this test, right? And this is just kind of like something we do in production that can be very helpful to you. And that is this. If I were to run Rails db seed, right, which is the command to seed my database based on the seed file, if I were to run that, it will execute what is known as silently, because it doesn't tell you anything. It's like seeded, boss, except it doesn't, right? It's just like, hey, you want to seed that database?
Unless something blows up, it doesn't say anything.
Correct, right? So how can we tell it what to tell us, right? Simply, it's just Ruby, right? Puts making bagels, boss. But oops. Yeah, sorry, just 2 S's, not 2 O's, right? And then you can simply put bagels is donezo. And now, if I were to run seed again, you will see it actually runs this, and now I know the bagels are done, right? And it prints to the console so I can see something actually happening. Unfortunately, because I ran seed twice, I only have 6 bagels in my database, 2 of everything, 2 of sesame, and 2 of Cinna Raisin, right? Just so we understand what's happening. I can check this by going into the Rails console. I'm lazy. I'm just going to put C, and it'll work just fine. I can now check my bagales. I can see all, and I should see 6 of these things, right? ID 6 is the last one. Any questions on just seeing the database, setting up the app, getting it to this point, using resource as a generator for my Rails, and all the magical benefits of that for me? Awesome. All right, so I have my model, right? That was like done through the resources. And now the question is, for MVC, what do I need next? Right? I have the M. Do I build the M? Do I build the V or the C? Right? Cool. The C. So in the C, I have this Bagales controller. And now we're just going to build all the RESTful routes. So what were those RESTful routes? Index. Nice. All right, cool. So I'm going to do this. And I'm just going to do bloop, 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 bloop. Nice. And what's the next one? Sure. Nice. Cool. Oh, wow. Oh, whoa. Sorry, I always spell destroy, so like I stutter on destroy. Cool. Are you saying 5 or you raising what's up?
Oh, I actually wanted to make a fun fact.
Please do.
Rails G control makes you can make all that stuff.
You can, yes. But we decided to go with resources.
We're doing it, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that fun fact. Thanks for laughing. Now I seem like a clown, right? I was just saying thank you for. Oh, this class tough. This class tough. All right, so model, right? And then we have the response, which we know right now is the view. Cool. So in the index, right? What do we need from the model? What do we need from the database? Oh yeah. So I need all the bagels. Bagel.all, right? Do I need anything else? What should I be responding with? What should I render here on my index?
You don't have to put anything.
You're 100% correct in the fact that I do not have to do anything. But what should be here? What is Rails automatically doing for me? Absolutely. It renders the index. Remember, ERB, which was like this trash code that we used for some old framework that we will not be named, right? This is how you used to see it, right? But now, instead, we're going to render. And that's just literally the jump from Sinatra to Rails. Oops, did I say oops? Sorry. Cool? Yeah? So naturally, if I tell this index to render index, what do I need? I need that index view. Oh yeah, index dot. Now the ERB comes in, right? It could be HTML.erb, but because after the 4 iterations of Rails, everyone understands that this ERB is in fact going to be HTML with embedded Ruby in it. So you can just do index.erb. Cool? Money. So a little bit of this, a little bit of index action. And now, what do I need to put in here for my index?
Oh, I can't even say it now. The ice cream cones? I don't know.
Absolutely, the ice cream cones, right? Because it looked like a Ruby, right? So we have bagels in here, right? And where's bagels coming from? Coming from the controller here, right? So let me go ahead and drop these ice cream cones in here. And then all I do is dot each, because remember, bagel.all is an array-like object, and I can dot each them, right? Dot each do with, huh?
We don't want equal percentage sign for this.
No, we don't. That would be terrible, right? A little bit of end action. And then here, what do we actually want? We'll get there, right? Just the bagel itself, right? Coming from this iteration. But specifically, what is bagel right here? It's the object. So what actually renders on the page? Does anyone know? I'll show you. Let us go to a little bit of localhost. Are we still on 9393? Trash, right? Trash. And how do we get to the index for bagels? Slash bagels, right? That's just a RESTful way to do it. Okay? Because I didn't start the server. It's embarrassing. Thanks for not laughing at me. There it is. There it is. Hurt feelings. Cool. So what we'll see is the actual bagel object coming through. Sometimes what you'll see is literally just this like hash, right? This like pound sign, right? Hashtag bagel. Cool. So if you see just a bunch of hash marks, you're like, oh my God, I'm just showing the object and not like the attribute of the object that I actually want to see, which is going to be a string. So let's do it. Bagel.nominate, right? Now, if I refresh, I just have all these bagels coming through. Cool. I can also, if I really wanted to, I can make an ordered list. All right, well this, cool. And then I can, I'm sorry, yeah, I can create list objects with this. And that should, let's find out. But that's not like, it's not good code. Sweet, so, cool. Did anyone miss what I just did? Awesome. So the index is done, right? Let's get that show, right? Because new and create sort of go together, right? New is going to give me that form, and then create's actually going to create the object. So instead, let's kind of work through show first, just get through all the read, and then we'll start messing around with like that create action. So what is show here? Do I need to talk to the model? I do. And I need that one bagel, and that is going to be bagel.find or find by. And does anyone know the difference? Yes, so I will go on this tangent because it's important. So I can go right into my Rails console, and I can do bagel.find and only pass in the ID, all right? And I'm gonna get the first bagel. I can do bagel.find by. I have to tell it, what am I gonna find by? I'm gonna find by the ID, and then I'm gonna tell it ID1, and that should return. Now, I can also do find by ID 9,000, right? Because its power level is that high. And if I return, it's going to say nil. But if I were to do find by an ID that does not exist in my database, it will run into an error. So what's going to wind up happening is one of them will actually break your app, and the other one will just return nil. And as you know, if you just display nil, nothing comes up. But you cannot display this like active record error. It'll just break on you. If you want to see what that looks like, just so you can kind of have a better debug process, what I'll do is I will find by the params of ID, and we will take a look at what's going on. Cool? So what is the response? What is the response here? Well, as we know, this rendered index, but as you have all so graciously pointed out, I do not need to render show because Rails will do this auto-magically for me. So let's build that show. Cool, show. And now all I'm gonna do is go through @bagel. Actually, I want that to display. And I want the name. I can probably throw name in here. And then I want like crispy. And I can just tell whether or not it is toasted. Toasty? Did I put toasty? Toasty? Cool. So how would I actually get to this show page? Well, I can check, right? Oops. So localhost 3000 action. If you really wanted to, you can do Rails/info/routes. It'll give you the same thing as rake routes, but without shutting down your server. You can actually see it in the browser. So if I wanted to go to the show action, I need to get to /bagel with an ID that exists, right? So let's do that. I can go /bagel/ let's say ID 6, that exists. Boom. Sesame, crispy. Cool. Now, if you remember, I used in my bagels controller the find, not find by. And find will throw the error. So if I were to say I'm going to go to bagel 8, which we know does not exist, it will break my code. This is what my user will see, which is like not what I really want, right? But if I were to do, say, find by the ID, right, it's going to try to find the ID 8. What the? Oh, did I not save? Oh yeah, it'll still error out here at bagel, right? When it runs through and does this, this is where it will error, which is a different error and will bring you to a different point. Does that make sense? Is everyone cool on like the difference between find and find by?
Would you ever use find by to find the page or the show page?
Would I use find by to use the show page?
Yeah, because we always use find
Mm-hmm.
and capture the ID, etc. Would we ever use find by to do the same thing as find?
There are use cases for find by because there will be times where, let's just say you don't have an ID, right? So for example, if you are signing into like Instagram or something, do you tell Instagram, my user account ID is 97432, my password is Michael, right? How is the database going to find that user object in the database? Well, it has to find it by the user name, because I'm going to pass in like Wangtron3000 or something. And I'm going to sign in as like password, I don't know, right? So there are times when find by will be more useful, but generally speaking, you just use find. Cool? Find by also allows you to handle that error, yeah. But for right now, just wanted to point out the differences. Cool? Good point. I like where your head's at, and yes, that's true. Anything else on find and find by? Awesome. So we're done with show. Yeah? Let's get back. All right. So should I do new or should I do create first? Mega bless. Let's do new, right? Because create is actually going to take the input of whatever new gives you, right? And so if you remember, new is the form. And here, do I need to talk to the model? And then do I send a response? What is the model object here, and what is the response? Why do I need @bagel equals bagel.new? Because what I want to avoid, and this is why I'm asking this question, is I want to avoid pattern matching. Because Rails is written in a very specific way, it can be easy to just be like, I've seen this, I know this works, I'm going to copy and paste this code. The problem with that is you cannot debug it if it ever goes wrong. And so the questions that you really need to understand is like, under the hood, why do I need this, right? Yes?
It's because the views are showing information by storing it in an instance variable.
Yes, but right now I'm just going to be doing what inside the new?
Creating a new
I'm actually just going to be sending a form. Just going to be sending a form. So right now, I don't actually have a need for a model, right? So what is the response? The response is going to be render new, right? But as we know, Rails understands that if the name is new, it's going to be looking for a file called new. So for now, let's leave new entirely alone and see if we can figure out why we might need something. So in Bagales, we hit new. And so what we'll do is we'll just do that new though, that new bagel though. Money, is there a bagel? Is there a bagel emoji? Shame, shame, shame. Baguette? Ugh, no. What is it? This is America. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just upset, sorry. Cool, so what do we know so far? We know form, right? And what I want to introduce to you today is this, right? Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Right? So we have HTML form, right? We'll just wrap this in like a p tag, just so we can kind of see what's going on here. There's something, right, in Rails called Rails helper methods. Specifically, when I'm building a form, Rails can help me build these forms for me. So, right, there are several of these form builders. The two important ones that I want to go over are form for. So here we'll have something called form tag rather. I'm going to hit tab, and it's going to build it for me if I have the Rails snippets installed. But we'll go line by line so we understand what everything is happening. All right? And then we have something called form for, and I'm going to hit tab, just so I can see every single thing that's happening. Cool? In the form, right, this is just going to go where? Where should this action go? It's a post to where? Well, if you remember, I need to hit the create action inside my controller. I can go back to my routes and see, I need to hit this create. What should I be hitting? What route should I be hitting? I need to hit a post to bagels. So here I'm hitting a post, right? Just hitting that post to bagels. Actually, let me do this. So I need to hit a post to /bagels, right? But I also realize, what's the difference between these two routes? What's the only difference between this blank /bagels and this blank /bagels?
The one is get HTTP, the one is getting the site, or getting the request while the other one is posting it.
I think you're.
I need to switch it.
I think you are diving deeper than the answer I'm looking for. But yes, yes. So the only difference between these two is essentially this HTTP verb, right? And that is the get and the post. Both are going to /bagel, right? So if I tell my browser I need to get to /bagel, it's actually going to wind up hitting this index. If I wind up doing a post to /bagel, I'm going to see this create. That's really the only difference. So if I can hard code and tell it this is definitely going to be a post, I can go to /bagels, and that's going to hit my create action. If I change this to get, then it will hit index. Does everyone see that? That being said, right, let's take that one step further. If there is absolutely no difference between the path here and here, why would I need to create two separate Rails helpers? Because this bagels path only points to the path. It does not point to the verb. That is not included, right? Like a toy from the 90s, like batteries not included. So if I just put if I put bagels path, it will give me /bagels. If I did a get to bagels path, it will hit index. If I were to do a post to bagels path, what would I hit? Create. One more time. If I do a get to bagels path, right? Because bagels path just means /bagels. What am I going to hit? I'm going to hit this index. If I do a post to bagels path and post, it's just going to give me this. And so I'm going to hit the create. If I want to see it completely in action, I can even get out of my server, go into the Rails console. I can ask the app, right, what is bagels path? And I should see /bagels. It does not tell me if it's a get, put, patch, or delete. Because all it tells me it's a /bagel. Are there any questions or confusion as to what the Rails helper route points to?
Just an observation on that page there, the info page is it's showing you the syntax of the helper method right there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's super money.
Just use that.
Super money. Cool. So now, instead of slash bagels, all right, this is a form, right? It should be post. Instead of slash bagels, is there a amazing helper that I can utilize instead of this slash bagels? And it would be bagels path. What does this look like to you? Does it look like HTML, or does it look like possibly a different language? Look like a Ruby, right? So I would, very good. I would, oops, just kidding. I would want to interpolate that. Cool? So in the same way, right, this form tag, right? Let's take a look at what form tag does, and then I'll break down the rest of these in the same way that form 4 does. So let's take a slight dive into these Rails helper methods, and let's see what happens on the other end. Right, here I have form tag, right, straight from the Ruby docs. It's form tag, right, and it's just a method. It takes in these arguments, right, this like parentheses, the bananas. It says, this looks like the path that I want to go to and the method that I want to use. So here, well, like I said, class is just for styling, so let's get rid of this. This is the path I want to go to, the submission path. Where am I submitting this to? And what method am I using? Well, I know I want to submit to at least a post. I do not want to do this get. And back to my routes. If I want to hit create, what is the submission path? Bagels path. Cool. This text field tag, as you can tell, is just a method. And it's just having these as parameters. So again, I don't need class here because class is just going to give me like some styling. So I have a placeholder here, and it looks like I can do, what is this? What would this search functionality, what would this search possibly mean if you're just like thinking about it? Well, text field tag, right? Probably wants to know what displays, right? And then ultimately how the params want to come through. So for now, let's just do name. Like I don't really want any of this extra stuff like the placeholder. Not really important right now. Let's just see what this text field tag does. In the same way that I probably want like a label. I think it's like label tag, right? Because like Rails is cool like that. It's just building a label for me, which looks a lot like this. So, in the same way that this form has a bad user experience because what is it missing? Submit, right? I probably want something else in here. Like, probably want the name of the bagel. Remember, name as an attribute is going to point to the attribute of bagels, right? And do we want a value in here right now or no? Maybe like a placeholder, right? So name of bagel. And then submit doesn't really need anything. Cool. Is this form done? Is this form have some sort of submit option to it? No. In the same way that I want to distinguish between regular submit and the Rails way, right? Look at this pattern here. What do you think I should be using for my submit? Submit tag, right? Oops. Cool. Is there anything I need to add to this? Right? Submit this form. Right? Like what actually needs to display inside the button for submit? Cool? This is a lot of information. I'm going to put them side by side in the breakdown. Let's take a look at this form 4. Actually, we'll do that in a little bit. Cool? Let's just see the difference between these two for now. I don't want to overwhelm you. Does that work? Awesome. Awesome. So how do I get to new inside my browser? bagel/new would be the RESTful way, right? Following, again, just my routes, right? Trying to hit this new action. I see a get to bagel/new. So I'm just going to do a get to bagel/new. I see an HTML form. It says name of bagel, please, which is very clearly coming from my code here. This is the HTML form. This is, however, sorry. Let's get rid of this. Boop, 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 boop. And let's put, okay, form tag form, just so we can kind of see the difference. Do you see what's happening here? Right? So the first form is just like the HTML form. The second one is the one that Rails built for me using the form tag. Yeah.
The name in line 14 is different from the name in line 13, right? Is the name in line 14 pointing towards the attribute?
In 14 points to the attribute, yes. And then 13 just like, I don't know, it's a label for. So in 13, right, we'll point to here.
Right.
And then text field will actually point to like the attribute field, the name field for this input. Cool? So let's take a look at what gets built. If I were to just take a look at this, let's see if I blow this up for you. Cool? Can everyone see this on the side? Is that clear? Awesome. So I have a regular form, right? That's the HTML form that I built right here. Right? It's just this, something you've already seen in Sinatra. But if I were to open this one, right? Notice how it's doing a post to /bagels, exactly what I want it to do, this bagel path, right? Same thing with this bagel path, it's just doing a post to /bagels. If I open this form, what I'll see is, what's this? Did I write this in here? Do you see this hidden authenticity token anywhere inside of this? It's the Rails auto magic when you're using any of the Rails builders, right? This form builder, for example, will automatically insert an authenticity token. I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to go long about it. But the bottom line is this authenticity token protects your form. If you submit it, Rails knows that it's a Rails form that came from Rails, and it's going to accept it. Otherwise, if there's no authenticity token, when I submit, Rails will be like, hey, that form didn't come from me. It's probably coming from somewhere else, so I'm automatically going to block it because it's potentially dangerous. Do you want other people submitting data to your application not from the form that you created?
No.
Absolutely not. Thank you. Ah, that was resounding. Exactly. So long are the days gone where you should be building forms by yourself with this standard HTML. Cool? So if I see this, I'm going to be like, hey, your app's unsecure? Unsecure. Right? Insecure? Insecure is more like personality, right? Unsecure. Let's just use not secure. Thank you. All right? Your app is not secure. Very good. English is important. So your app is not secure in this way. Not that it doesn't necessarily work, because it actually won't. Rails will just block it. But it's also not secure. It's bad practice. So is everyone cool if I just kind of get rid of this? Yeah? It's trash code over here. Boo! Right? And just like this label tag belongs right to this label. All right? And that label, if you see the highlight, will kind of point to exactly what I'm talking about. This input type will go right here. And notice name points to name, which is coming from here, right? As an attribute. And then my submit tag, right? Submit this form, and that's like exactly the string here, going into the word of this button. Any questions on this? Who wants like a 5-minute break? Who wants to just plow through? Awesome. All right, cool. So now let's go over form 4, right? Sweet. So form 4, right? With the Rails snippets, I can just do this. Boop, boom, right? Let's see how form 4 works, right? I go right to the docs, Just kidding. Right to the docs. Just kidding. Right to the docs. Bam. Let me just blow this up a little bit so you can see it, right? This is another form helper. And it says form 4, and it looks like at person. This looks like something we've seen before, right? An instance variable. This is an object. And this is the HTML that gets generated from this form 4. So let's take a look at it, right? I have a form 4, this person object. And if we look at it, do I specify the route anywhere? No, where's this like URL path, submission path? It's missing. Yet, when I look at this form action, it seems to know that it's a post, and it seems to know the action is /people, even though I'm passing in something called @person.
That's why you need in the new method in the computer, the Bagel, like you need to initialize.
100%. Absolutely. So for those that didn't catch on as quickly, right, I'm building this form for a particular object, right? So this form 4 needs an object, right? I'm just typing this so you can kind of see it. That being said, in my bagels controller, I probably want in my new, right, @bagel equals to, am I creating the bagel here inside the new? No, I'm just creating this bagel object. So this bagel object essentially needs to be like a shell. It needs to be like an empty bagel object with no data in it. How can I do that? Bagel.new, right? And that will give me bagel with no ID, nil for name, nil for toasty, and then nil for created at and updated at, right? So now that I have this bagel object, in my new, I have access to the bagel object. So I can just do @bagel. Do you see how, like, reading this documentation, you can kind of learn and figure out what's going on? And so, what is this rendered share errors? I don't see in the documentation. Sounds like something we're going to get to when we talk about errors, right? So let's just kick that can down the bucket to Wednesday. Boop, gone, right? So I have something called F here. Yeah, this is tricky. Bear with me. I have F object, sorry. Usually when you like mess with certain letters in isolation, they come out wrong out of context. So I have this F object, right? In the same way, when I use my create table, right? Let's take a look. Where have I seen a pattern like this similarly? Create table, right? Just like this, I have this like table object, this T object, and I'm calling it on every single row. So this new, in the form 4, I'm doing something for this form. And with this form object, I want to build a form text field. But what is the attribute for bagel that I want in here? Name, right? Probably want something else like toasty, right? And then I can do, finally, because I don't want that bad user experience, should I just do submit? What do I need? I need that F dot though, right? Cool. Is this it? Well, it looks to me like it's probably okay. I probably should throw a label in there. I'm listening. Yeah, what's up?
Well, okay, toasty is a union though.
Correct.
Would the text field work with? Oh, I guess it would.
Yeah, there's no validations in here, right? So I can literally hard code true or false in here. The fact is there are other fields in here, right? There's like a number field, and I think there's like a Boolean field. Yeah, that's the one. Checkbox, right? And that's, I'm just gonna check it if it's true or false. Checkbox? Yeah, checkbox field. I think it makes sense. Cool. So let's go back to Flavortown, right? I should see this HTML form gone because it's trash. It's not secure. And I should see a form tag and the form for form, right? Yeah.
It's f.check_box without the underscore.
F.checkbox like this. Let's find out. And there you go. Nice, nice, right? So I see this form tag and I see the form 4, and they're both building this form. But what I really want to know is, does it build that authenticity token for me? In the form tag, it does, right? And the form 4, let's take a look. And there it is. Yup, absolutely. So now I have a label, right? In this f.label. I have this bagel with the key of name. Interesting. That's really weird. And then bagel with the key of toasty. A little bit different than what we're used to. So let's take a look to see how that has affected the params. What's up, G? What's up?
Oh, yeah. So I noticed it create bagel button. Where's that coming from?
Oh, okay. Yeah. In this form 4, and I'll explain what this is going to be doing, in this f block, f.submit recognizes that all of these are like empty, they're nil, which means that if it does not exist, what is this form probably doing? It's creating, right? There's like this inherent logic that flows. So let's take a look at something interesting, right? Form tag, does this have an associated object with it? No, it doesn't, right? Only the form 4. So what form 4 is actually doing under the hood is under text field or this attribute of name, what it's going to be doing sneakily in the background is it's going to do @bagel.name, right here. It's going to do that for you in the background. It's also going to do it for you right here in the background when you call this. The fact is, we did bagel.new, so is there anything inside @bagel.toasty? What should come back? Nil, right? So naturally, nil would render like an empty space, right? So that's what's happening. And when it runs these, it's going to see that @bagel has nil ID, nil name, nil toasty, nil everything. So this f.submit will logically flow and follow along and be like, well, if all this is nil, then this must be an object that doesn't exist. This form must be creating the object. So you can see create bagel inside the submit button.
You can change that though, right?
You can. You just pass it a string right here. Yeah. Cool. Are there questions on form tag and form 4? Yeah.
When do I know which one to use?
Amazing question. Let's move forward and see what the difference is and what comes across as params.
As of now, in the form 4, the checkbox, the value that's sent to the params, is that a true or false value for checkboxes?
No, but let's take a look at what comes across in params. Cool? Very good question. I like where your head's at, right? So both of these, right, look like they're going to do a post, right? And where is this action? /bagels. So what route am I going to hit? I'm going to hit the create, right? I'm going to create this create action. So naturally, what I want to do is drop the bybug, because we're in Rails now. We've got our big developer pants on, and we use bybug, no longer binding pry. Cool? So let's take a look to see what comes across in the form tag, right? Form tag name params, right? I'm just putting this in here to be super explicit so you see what's going on. If I hit submit this form, what should I hit? I'm going to hit the bybug in the create, right? Because I'm doing this post to /bagels. So let me hit this. Hitting it, hitting it, hitting it, right? And there I am, as promised. Let's take a look at these params. Something that we're already kind of familiar with, right? It's like this params hash. I have this authenticity token in here. I also have name, right? I have something called commit, which is submit this form, the controller, and the action. Interesting. So would it make sense to do bagel.create with just the params? Why not? Well, I'm getting the UTF, I'm getting authenticity token, I'm also getting name, which is like one of the fields that I want, right? I'm getting controller, I'm getting action, And we did not create an input for toasty, so that's just not coming through. So I can no longer be using just params here because of all these extra things that are coming in on the params. That make sense? I want to be able to somehow isolate only the attributes that I want. I want to be able to create a nested attribute. So what would that look like? Well, if I had a hash and it just looked like an empty hash, right? And then I should have did H. I'll do H because I'm lazy. I'll use hash then. Fine, right? And I were to create a key of, say, something like attribute. Just ATR. It's going to be lots of type. You'll see, right? I'm just creating a key of attribute, and I'm assigning it to something like what? Let's just say another hash, right? So if I were to look at hash, I'm going to see a hash with a nested attribute key pointing to another hash. What I really want to do is inside this attribute hash, create a new key, right? Like something like name, and that's going to be, right? I don't know, egg bagel, egg bagale, cool. Then inside of here, I can put toasty, right? And I can put no, because it's just a string. Hypothetical scenario. So if I were to look at my hash again, which again is just the params hash I'm mimicking, I can see inside attribute name and toasty, right? And so I can do hash at a key of attribute and only get the ones that I want. So if I had hash with the key of like auth token and it equaled like something wild, let's take a look at hash again. I can separate out the attributes that I want, no matter what comes across in my params. I want to nest the params one extra level. So the way that's done is inside this form tag, if you look, we simply have in the form tag an attribute with name going to name. That's all we have, right? So let's do this. If I were to go to bagels new, and I were to mess with this form, instead of this input, I wanted to nest the hash, right? I can have a cool name, right, like nested, and then pass in a key of name. So if I were to submit, right, Oreo, I just saw Wreck-It Ralph, sorry. Anyways, I hit submit, and I check my params. It looks like I have all of this stuff in here, but I have nested pointing to the key of Oreo. So if I wanted my params at a key of nested, I can get only the parameters that I want. I can use this to do bagel.create. Does that make sense? I'm getting rid of controller, action, authenticity token, UTF-8, all the other extra stuff that comes in params and isolating only what it is that I want. Okay, so there's something else here called permitted false, right? Something called strong params. So let's kind of get into that. If this is doing that, right, in my nested params, in my form, I don't want to have to like hack my form, right, this form tag, right? Here, form 4, let's see if our good friend form 4 will help us. If I open up this form, what the? That's weird. You'll see under text, bagel, it already nests it for me, right? There's this bagel with the attribute of name, and there's a bagel with the attribute of toasty. So I'm creating this bagel params hash inside the params hash. Like it's nesting it for me. So let's exit, and let's not use this form tag, but instead use the form 4 and say, I don't know, what's a cool bagel, right? Salty bagel. I think people just make a bagel with salt. It's bizarre. Let's check the box and see what comes across the params. Pretty standard stuff, except this time there's a bagel hash inside my params. So I can do I can do params at a key of bagel, and it'll give me only the attributes that I want to create. So in a Boolean, right, when it breaks down computer science in that language, true, false only break down to 0 and 1. So if I have a Boolean attribute and I pass in a 1, it means true. If I pass in a 0, it means false. So the checkbox is only going to be sending back 0 and 1. Cool? It will get stored as true or false because it will recognize the data type as a Boolean. Does anyone need a break before we go? Yeah?
Wait, so you're saying that the 1 will automatically turn into true?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Just one more question. It got bagel from, could you just go back to the it got the key of bagel from, where is that? From that bagel?
From this bagel right here. It creates this nested hash for you inside the form 4. All right? So to answer your question, when I'm creating an object, form 4 is the way to go because it already builds this for me. It also inherently understands the submission path, and so form 4 is the better option when creating an object. All right? If I don't necessarily have an object, right, but I still want a form, that's when I would use form tag. An idea of this would be, let's just say I'm on Google, right? And I'm searching for flights. I'm on Google Flights. Is there a flight object inside my search params, in my search bar? Not really. It's just like, hey, tell me what you want to look for. All I need is a generic form to take in search parameters. And then I'm going to scrape the web for the search parameters, right? Using like Nokogiri or something. So if you don't have an object, if you don't have something specific to create, then the form tag would be the right answer. But if you're like creating or editing something, then it would be for a specific object. That's when I would use form 4. Is that a good enough response for that? Jason? Is that good enough? Yeah? For like form 4 versus form tag, when I would use what and what they're good for.
So if you were like on a itinerary website, then you would use form 4. It would make like a blank itinerary for you, and you can add stuff to it.
It really depends on the schema, right? If you have the object and you want to do something with the object, form 4. If there's no object associated, then you would just have a generic form, and I'd use form tag. Cool? All right. If there are no hands, we will take a break. Who does not want to take a break? Great, let's take a 5-minute break. Oh, I totally forgot how to do this. Great, so now that I have this nested params, it would make sense that I can do something like bagel.create with, right, the params at a key of bagel so that I can isolate it from all the other params. Unfortunately, it says active model forbidden attributes error because of something called permitted false. So what I really want to do is I want to take these params and I want to access the bagel param. So what I'm going to do is require, and this is just a method that's going to take in the key that I want, and that is, for right now, bagel. And it's going to give me just these. And it's still permitted false. So here, I just want to permit that to be true. And now it says permitted true. Cool? So what I could do is I could take this sweet line of code. I can do bagel.create with this code. And now it will actually write to my database. The problem is Rails will automatically and always block things touching your database. No matter what, it's going to be like, hey, nah, dog, run that block on that database, because we don't know what the hackers are trying to do. But I know exactly what I'm trying to do, and that is create a bagel object specifically with a name and a toasty attribute. So if I'm doing that, I can hard code and permit which parameters that I want. Cool? Yeah.
Wait, yeah, so, all right, so wait, when you do permit true,
Yeah.
are you accounting for like all the parameters?
I'm not
Or
accounting.
all the attributes for that instance?
I'm not accounting for any attributes right now, because if you look really closely, it says unpermitted parameters, name and toasty. So when I actually made this bagel object, name is nil and toasty is nil. So what I really want to do is I want to specifically permit the name, and I want to specifically permit toasty. And now I have salty and true.
So then what was the, just
The first one I just said I'm going to make this true, right? If I run permit, it will just make it true. I just put true in there so you like see what's happening.
so if
True is not an actual attribute of bagel.
all right, so if that's the case, if you just make permit true, are you allowing potential like changes to the?
Permit true is doing like nothing. Permit is what changes this to true, and I just put true as like an attribute. I'm only permitting this true attribute, which we don't actually have. And so I only want to permit name and toasty. Nothing else can come in here except an attribute called true, which we don't have.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is why it's still, I wanted to show the block first,
Okay.
right? And that is, it's blocking anything that's not an attribute named true. Permit now, I want to change it to tell it, these are the attributes I actually want, name and toasty. So if you want to do it one more time, and I were to take out toasty, right? And probably this comma too. You will see name is good, but toasty is nil. It did not allow anything except what I explicitly told it. This is known as whitelisting, and this is a design pattern called strong parameters. Because you don't want people touching your database unless you specifically know exactly what they're touching. Right? So, based on that, right, knowing what we know from this form 4, right, we can go back to the controller, finally get rid of this by bug here, and do @bagel equals to bagel.create with the params.require, right? And that is going to be requiring the key of bagel, which was the nested hash. And I want to permit the name attribute and the toasty attribute. That's what I want to permit. So looking at this, this is how it's done, right? Then after my create, just like in Sinatra, it'll be like, hey, bagel's done, boss. Well, now I want you to redirect, right? Let me redirect. And the difference between Sinatra and Rails, redirect to, as opposed to just redirect. And I'm going to go to the, either I can do the bagel's path, which will point to my index from my Rails helpers, or I can do the bagel path, but which bagel? I'm going to tell it the specific bagel that I just made, this one. Right?
Is that the equivalent of going to, is that under the hood there, it's going to probably show? Right?
That is exactly where it's going to. It's going to show because of the helper method that points to show from the Rails routes, from what you get from resources. Cool? That being said, let's see if it all works. Cool? Now, I need to get out of this by bug. Yeah.
What happens if we use .new as opposed to .read?
You mean here?
Yeah.
Well, .new will not save it to the database. So if I use .new, I have to use .save as well. Create will do new and save in one command. Pretty nifty. So let's do this, right? Anyone? All right, great. Bacon, egg, and cheese. And I always want that toasty. If I create, it should make it and then render right to the show page. Any questions on this create? Great. So, something you probably touched on in Mod 1 is in this class, all of these methods are known as public methods, right? We specifically want this information to be hidden from any hackers. So what we can do is I can just call a method in here, right? And I can call it like bagel params, right? So that it's extracted away from like anyone that can see these public methods. What I can do is I can sneak it away, I can hide it, and I can protect it in a private method that no one else can call except for the instance itself, right? So I can call this, right, bagel params, because that's exactly what I'm calling right here. And all I'm going to do, seriously, is this exact line of code that I just cut out. So now, this right here will get called here. But it's a private method, so nobody should have access to it from the outside. And so this is a design pattern known as strong params, right? In order to whitelist, which is just a fancy way of saying specifically allow only these attributes, right? To prevent scary internet hacksaws, right? Are there any questions as to what this strong params is and how I just extracted it into a private method in the class?
You actually have to write private.
You have to write private because anything follows will be a private method. Awesome. So let's move on. Now, we talked about new and we talked about create in the same way that edit and update are paired together, right? Edit is just going to render the form, and then update is just going to update the object, right? In like a patch. So, what do I need here? In this edit, do I need anything from the model? What do I need from the model? I can do find with the params of ID. If you remember, right, edit is just going to be a /bagels /ID /edit. So I have the params coming in from the URL. All right, and then of course, what is my response? Right? I know you don't like to see it, but I'm just going to put it in there for you. Right? It's going to be rendering in edit. I need to make it. And so here, h1, I'm just going to put edit form for bagels. Yeah? What does this form look like? Well, I could tell you, if you remember in the new, it's a form for a bagel. And here it's again calling bagel.name. Right? Whenever I call name here or name here. Unfortunately, here in the new, it was nil. Right? But in the edit, in the bagels controller, we did a bagel.find. Does this bagel object already exist inside my database?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if I do this, right, I change literally nothing of this code. Let's go to bagels10 /edit and see what happens. Bagel. Name is already in there. And so is this toasty boolean. It's already checked. Well, how did this happen? At bagel.name translated to BEC. Right, bacon, egg, and cheese. And toasty was a boolean that returned true, so the check mark's already done. But look, what's this? Update bagel, not create bagel, because this form for bagel in the edit, not the new, bagel has an ID, bagel has a name, bagel has all of these attributes that already exist. So naturally, in my edit, if the object already exists, I must be updating it, right? So Rails will do that magic for you. And let's take a look at what's going on here. Looks like it's a post. Looks like it's already going to edit bagel path, right? I'm sorry, that's the class. It's already going to the edit bagel path, right? And look, so smart, patch is already done for you. Patch, which overrides post to the bagel with the ID, will hit what controller action? The update, right? A patch to /bagel/ID will give me, if you remember, in the routes, right? If I were to go to any of these updates, it's going to be a patch or a put to /bagel/10, which is exactly what we see right here in this form. /bagel/10, post, just kidding, psych, patch. And so this should hit my update. And I literally did nothing to the form. So now my update, I should be doing something like bagel, right? Because this is the model, equals to bagel.find. And how can I find this thing? Do I have access to the params?
Yes.
How would I know if I have access to the params? Well, I know I have this delimiter here, right? This like colon ID. So I know the params ID exists. Now that I have this add bagel, I can always do bagel.update with the params coming from the form, right? Which we know form 4 will nest it for you. So I can just call this bagel params right here. Look at this reusability. Magic. And then once it's done, cool. Now I want to redirect to what? I want to redirect it right to the bagel path, which comes from bagel path, and it needs the object that it needs to know, and it will be a get. So redirect will always do a get. Let's see if that works. If I were to go to edit this bagel, right? And for whatever reason, people don't understand this, and I have to spell it out. And it's still toasty for sure, and I update the bagel. I should see now it's bacon, egg, and cheese, still crispy. And finally, let's talk about destroy. Do I need to know something about destroy? Do I talk to the model here? Do I need to know which one I'm destroying? Absolutely. So a little bagel action, little bagel.find, right? Little params action by ID. And then I can just do bagel.destroy. And then I want to redirect to, can I redirect to the @bagel? Because I blasted it, right? So I probably want to go to the bagels path, because that's the index. That's safe. That's always going to exist. All right? So that should work. But the problem is now, where am I going to put this like delete button, and how do I even get it to work? Interesting. Well, let's think about it, right? Let's go to the index, and what I would like to do as a deliverable, let's just say you saw this deliverable come through, and that is, on my index page, I want to see a delete button next to every single bagel. How would you go about and do that? Yeah. Okay. So what I want to do, sorry, I thought I saw a hand. What I want to do is actually literally make this button to do a delete. Wonder if Rails has some sort of button helper. Button to or button tag. Great. Now my options are clear. Right? Does that make sense? Did you see how I just kind of like figured that out? Right? So which one do you want to go to? Let's just do button 2. Literally does not matter. You can make both work, right? let's look at some examples of this button. Cool. Let's take a look at how I can do this. Button 2, destroy with some sort of route. Method delete. Remote true, we won't get into. This looks great. I'm just going to rip this bad boy right here. Cool. Does that make sense? So all I'm going to do is inside this each, right? I'm also going to build, I'm also just going to build this button 2. Sorry, it needs to be in like one line.
It's missing the.
Oh, I'm missing this one, right? Cool, there we go. So I'm going to do a button 2. It's going to be called destroy. This is the path. This is the method I'm using. Remote true we won't get into. It's not important. If you want to know, you can Google it or we'll talk offline. This data. It looks like it says confirm, are you sure? Disable with loading. What do you think that does? Just like a guess as to what this readability of this code looks like.
Before it actually does it, we want you to reconfirm.
It's exactly what it's doing, right? It looks like in this button, when I click this destroy, it's probably going to confirm with me. So let's take a look back at index to see what came up. How do I get to index? /bagels. And so what I'm going to see is a destroy button for each of these. But let's actually take a look under the hood. What does this destroy button do? It's a button 2. It looks like this button builds a form. Sneaky, right? Look at this form. And all it's doing is it's doing a post, but it's overriding it with a delete action, going to something called example.com. Is that where I want it to go? No. What I really want to do is I want to hit this controller action. I want to hit destroy because then I can just find the bagel, destroy it, redirect to the index. Right? How can I make this button 2, which is really like a form, go to destroy? Well, in my routes, I know to hit destroy, I have to do a delete with a bagel's ID. The bagel path gives me bagel's ID. So I can probably do bagel path here. I can tell it which bagel I want, right? Method delete. That's going to differentiate it from the bagel path that is method put, bagel path that is method get. It's going to do this. If it's doing this with delete, it should in fact hit destroy. So let's take a look. If I go to Flavortown, hit refresh, make sure I double check my destroy, it's going to /1 and bagel /1 with the delete value instead of post, right? Instead of post, hit the controller, do the deleting, then re-render index. Are you sure, right? Because that's the data confirmation. Absolutely. And now it's gone. Usually there's like clapping or like a yeah, great. This is the clap, right? Okay, yeah, what's up?
This looks like some pretty dangerous logic to have in review. Can it go in the, would you put something like this in the method or the model and then call the method?
Remember, this is essentially just a Rails helper and it's building a form for me. There's no real logic here as much as it's just, I need a form that just goes right to delete. If I wanted to be super dirty, right, all I have to really do, and I'll get to your question in a second, is hit this method. I don't need to send any params over, right? All I really need to do is just hit this method. I can use a link to, tell it to go to delete, tell it to go to /bagel/ID, and that's it. So link to will even work. It's kind of grimy, but again, there's a lot of ways to do this, but you just need to hit the controller, right? Yes, sir.
So I saw that like it doesn't, when you delete something, it doesn't like reset the IDs. gonna, like, that bagel that you deleted an ID of 1,
Mhm.
like now, like, the first one on the list starts at 2. Is that just normally how it works, or like, do you, like,
It should always be like that because you never want your database to reshuffle. Because, for example, let's just say you are the 1300 user of Instagram. If somebody deletes their Instagram account, right, do you want to be the 1299th user now? No, you're always the 1300 user. All of your photos, all of your comments are attached to you and your ID in that object. Yeah.
I think this just went over my head, but in the method for destroy,
Yeah.
when you actually call @bagel.destroy,
Yeah.
is that we're calling the method within the method, or is that a different method that's built in that I just wasn't seeing?
This right here,
Yeah.
this destroy, is what I've named this particular route. This .destroy on the instance of Bagel is coming from active record. Right? So this destroy is an instance method from active record that will delete it from the database. Cool?
Can you also create an edit button next to it?
I can also do that, right? I can very much also do that. I can easily do something like link to, and then I can like pass it in the edit path, and then it will go to like the edit page. So I can be like link to like edit this page, and then pass in the URL, right? So like I think it's like edit bagel path, and then I think I need to give it the bagel, right? So if I hit refresh, I can go to the edit page for this bagel. Which is crazy to me because do I actually need, edit this page? I can just interpolate it, right? So now I'm thinking I can probably wind up doing link to, right, this bagel name, and I can just do bagel path here. This is the show page for this particular bagel. So now all of the bagels, right, there is a show page, an edit, and a destroy. And that's like the full CRUD with Rails. Are there any questions? Great, that's all I got for you today.